we create a pagan Kabbalah, or can we use Kabbalah within a pagan tradition? You tried practicing Occidental esotericism or mysticism, but somehow or for some reason the Judeo-Christian pantheon and hierarchy didn't really resonate with you. But yet you saw some value in the Occidental esoteric tradition, so you'd like to use that matrix for your own practice. Maybe you've studied or even practiced for a while traditions like the Golden Dawn or Thelema or stuff like that. Now you're wondering if you can use pagan pantheon and pagan concepts instead of the Abrahamic ones. Today we are going to talk about specifically the Sephirotic tree, the tree of life from Kabbalah, that is one of the foundations of Western occultism, modern Western occultism. We will see where this type of hierarchization comes from. We will see if it's compatible with paganism, and at the end I will give you a valuable tip on how to approach this problem, how to approach this situation. This will be a bit of a longer video, so save it or watch it when you have the time. So can we create a pagan Kabbalah? Now, if you have any knowledge of Kabbalah, you know that the Sephirotic tree has a few spheres, and each represents a world, a space of existence, and they are more and more grossier, more and more physical as you go down. Closer you get to our own realm, the more physical the energy is, the more worldly the energy, or the existence is more physical. The higher the sphere or the heaven, the more spiritual it is, the closer it is to the creator, to the ultimate source of life, of spiritual power. Now every sphere represents a level of heaven, and every level is associated with a planet in the ancient way of seeing planets. So sun and moon are also planets here. Now the idea of a multi-layered sky is also found in the Babylonian traditions, and it's very old. But associating each level of the heaven with the planets is something that originates from the Greek philosophy, or the ancient Greek scientists, Doxus of Cnidus, an ancient Greek astronomer and mathematician, student of Plato and influenced by Pythagoras, makes a remarkable revolutionary scientific discovery in astronomy. He realizes that the planets move around the Earth at different distances. So each planet has its own heaven on which it spins around the Earth. Thus, we have a layered sky, and each layer is controlled, or it belongs to a certain planet. Now the ideals of Platon, that the further you go away from Earth, the more spiritual thing is, the more it becomes closer to the archetype, would be in time harmonized with this discovery of Eudoxus by Plato's followers and disciples. So in time, this new concept is formed, this new tradition is formed around the multi-layered heaven, each layer being more and more spiritual. You get more spiritual the further you go up. So initially there were 7 heavens, the 7th heaven being the highest heaven that you could achieve, or well, I don't know if it was possible for a human to achieve that, but that was the highest there was. Now this idea starts to spread, and it reaches the Jews, the Judaic people that formed the Kabbalah. They put the foundation of Kabbalah, and later it is the same belief in a layered heaven that will influence the magicians from Renaissance, and from what those magicians wrote, modern spiritual societies or esoteric societies took inspiration. So everything you know about Kabbalah comes from these Renaissance magicians. It were both European and Jewish. And you see this hierarchy of heavens in almost every Western esoteric tradition system. So coming back to our question, can we make a pagan Kabbalah? Well, if the ideas of Platon and Eudoxus and of his followers could have traveled to Europe, to all the tribes, then yes, a certain form of Kabbalah could be made. Historically speaking, in at least some places of Europe, these new scientific discoveries were not received by the people, so they could not adapt their mythology accordingly. Or, the idea came, but they just rejected it. It's possible as well. So the rest of the Europeans, there was only one sky, no layers, nothing to do with the planets. Of course, they had a form of astronomy, but this concept of a multi-layered heaven, each layer being controlled by a planet, was not present. So in the Germanic mythology, for example, Viking paganism, we see that there are many worlds, but not multi-layered heavens. There isn't a heavenly hierarchy, not in that sense. It's the same in Celtic legends. The journeys to the other worlds was never done upwards into the astral spheres or into the worlds, but it was done by land, or most common by sea. You travel there on the same level you traveled on the earth to the other realm, usually an island. So the world beyond, and I'm not specifically talking about the world of the dead, but to any other world, was usually on the same level as are we, because we see that the tradition of journeying into other worlds remained on the same level in folk traditions way after the Christianization. Now, the high priests of any pagan pre-Christian tradition of Europe were interested in astrology, and some of them traveled to the Greco-Roman world to learn, so they could know about this multi-layered heaven, so they could have updated their worldview, their religious worldview. But most of them didn't get the chance to do that because they were killed by the Romans or by Christians, or they converted and forgot their old beliefs. Well, not forgot, but not used them anymore. But there are other places where we have there are other places in Europe that suggest that this idea actually came of the idea of multi-layered heaven arrived to some pagan tribes, and they maybe adopted it. Now, it's up to you, obviously, to decide if such a system fits with your own belief system, if it has a place in your practice. Romans and Greeks, for example, although initially they had the same world structures as other Europeans, and you can see this in the Iliad, for example, meaning they had three worlds: heaven, our world, and the other world, or the underworld, and they traveled to parallel worlds, usually by sea. So the Greeks and Romans they managed to adapt their older spiritual beliefs into the new, with the new scientific discovery. So the Greco-Roman mythology is compatible, obviously, with the Neoplatonic way of seeing the world and with the Kabbalah. And this proves that all other European religions can be compatible with Kabbalah and with the Platonic way of seeing things. But this change, historically speaking, didn't happen. It's possible that it actually happened in the heavily Romanized regions, like the territory of Spain, for example, of today's Spain, obviously, as well as the space of the Thracians. The Thracians were heavily influenced by the Greeks, and then the Romans came and again heavily Romanized them. So a Neoplatonic way of seeing the multi-layered heaven probably was compatible with their religion in the later antiquity. So the multi-layered heaven that is the basis of Kabbalah is compatible with, or can be made compatible with, any pagan tradition. Take a shot each time I said tradition. But historically speaking, it didn't happen in a great part of Europe, and it probably happened in the Romanized regions or the Hellenized regions. That's why I said, it's up to you to decide if you want to use it or not. So let's say you want to use it. You want to apply a Kabbalistic worldview or a Kabbalistic cosmology, let's say that, to your pagan belief, to your pagan practice. Now, in this case, just relying on the comparisons, is that a word in English? Relying on the parallels that the Romans made with the Celto-Germanic or Thracian, or whatever deities, is not enough. Can't really rely on what Tacitus wrote, for example. Odin has very little to do with Mercury or Hermes as a god. Of course, he is probably a psychopomp, but Odin also has other functions. He has a totally different personality, and he serves a different function. So he is not the equivalent to the Mercury sphere of Kabbalah. So he's not fit to be placed in Hod, I think it's the sphere called, the Mercury sphere in the Kabbalistic tree. Crowley, for example, believed that this space actually fits better with Loki, but that's, who cares? So to make these associations in an honest way, to honestly say that you manage to fit the Kabbalistic tree of life to your pagan practice, well, in order to do that, you'll have to really, really study Kabbalah as it was originally. You have to study your own tradition, and you have to study a lot of comparative mythology. You should physically experiment each god and each sphere, see what experiences you have, what sensations you have, and to check if what you think fits actually fits. Because spirituality is not just a mental game. There needs to be substance behind it. The two concepts can be used only if they are truly compatible, only if there is truly spiritual force behind that. Hopefully you can understand me. It's not a mental game, it's real things. Now, those who don't want to use this system, don't want to use Kabbalah, but they are interested in a similar way of organizing the world and using the worlds for whatever reason, will have to take inspiration from other non-Abrahamic traditions that were not affected by the Mediterranean system of seeing the world. Look into Taoism, for example. It fits actually strangely well with the Indo-European, with the Indo-European cosmology. If you don't like that, then check Hinduism, check shamanism, and the other systems that were well documented. It will be quite a ride, it will be quite hard, so I'll make a video to help you in the future. Don't forget to follow for more, and thank you for sticking with me for such a long time.